Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Craig's Sports. This is the Week 4 USFL DFS video, and if you haven't been around for these videos yet, welcome in first of all. But what I'm going to do throughout this video, pretty much go team by team, talk about each player on each team, whether or not I would play them in cash or GPP. If you guys have any specific questions for this week's slate, be sure to let me know as well. Kind of sucks because it's separated over 3 days once again, so we don't really know the injuries and the inactives for the final game with the Houston Gamblers and the New Orleans Breakers, but let's kind of talk about kind of how I feel about that game overall as well. Obviously, you can always pivot to players in that game once we do get more information as well. As long as you didn't play guys in the first game, you can change everybody else out essentially. But without further ado, we'll get into it with the very first game of the weekend. We have the Philadelphia Stars and the Michigan Panthers. For the Philadelphia Stars, the big thing to note here is Brian Scott is out indefinitely. He's inactive this week altogether. So Case Cookus is going to be your starting quarterback, $6,500. Was actually pretty good last week, 13 out of 20 for a little bit over 100 yards. I believe he had one touchdown as well. He's a guy that's not going to offer any rushing upside, but the price tag at $6,500 is very intriguing. Potentially a guy you could play in cash or GPP settings. And then we move down to running back where we got Darnell Holland. He's inactive once again due to injury. We got Paul Terry at $3,300. This could be a very good cash play, a very good way to save some money as well. And then Matt Colburn, who's more of the receiving back at $5,200, more of a GPP play overall. Then we move down to the Philadelphia wide receivers. So I'm going to just say it right now. All these guys essentially to me are GPP plays. Chris Rowland had the big week 1, was kind of been limited since then. Maybe he gets more involved once again this week. Maurice Alexander, we saw a big week in week 2, but not so much last week. Jordan Sewell was a little bit more in week 2. DeAndre Overton obviously had a touchdown in the 1 week, but hasn't done much other than that. Devin Gray's kind of been the main guy, but at $7,800, I don't really like that price tag for him overall. Then we get down to Bug Howard at tight end. You could take a chance on in GPPs at $4,000. Pro Wells would just be a dart throw at this point in time. Then we move over to the opposite side of the ball with the Michigan Panthers. We got Shea Patterson at $10,000. It's important to note that Paxton Lynch is not active this week. He is injured as well. So Shea Patterson should get all the workload. So that makes him a little bit more intriguing. Probably just a GPP play more than anything. Reggie Corbin was very, very effective last week, and I'll just say this too, with the time that I made my video, he was listed as inactive. Then all of a sudden he ended up being active, and he kind of took a bulk load of work. Obviously, they used all 3 running backs, and they ran a ton last week, so we'll see if they do that once again. But Reggie Corbin, $3,500. Maybe a potential cash play there, but a solid option in GPPs as well. And then Cam Scarlett and Stevie Scott are more just GPP options at this point in time. I do like Stevie Scott, the player, a lot, but $8,400 is a hefty price tag with him sharing the backfield, obviously with 2 other guys. Lance Lenore has been their most consistent wide receiver at $8,500. Probably just GPP only at this point in time. Devin Ross hasn't done too much at $3,500. Same thing with Ray Bolden. Those 2 guys are active this week, $3,500 and $3,000. Jeff Badette's inactive. Quincy hasn't played all year, so I don't know why they keep putting him back on here. Tight ends I'm not really touching for Michigan. I will go back to the main part where we're going to find Joe Walker since they don't have him on the depth chart. He's $3,300. Obviously, he had the big week 1 with Shea Patterson, a guy that he trusts quite a bit. So if you want to play him in GPPs, you can do that as well. Then we move over to the Saturday games with the New Jersey Generals. Obviously, you got the dual quarterback situation with Luis Perez and DeAndre Johnson. Not really touching either one. Johnson would be the guy just because he has that rushing upside, and $8,800. Still not a bad price tag overall. We got Trey Williams at $7,400. Probably more of a GPP option at this point in time. I do like him quite a bit, but in terms of cash, that's just a little bit more than I want to spend at running back. Darius Victor, I believe, is like $4,000 still for some reason. Yes, $4,000. He's averaging 13 points per game. I believe he scored 2 touchdowns last week, and they're splitting the workload pretty good, so I would consider Darius Victor for cash or GPP as well. In terms of the wide receivers, they've kind of been really all over the place this year, honestly. So Jaywan Moore and Cam Eccles-Looper are both inactive this week. So we do have Randy Satterfield, had the big week 1, hasn't done too much since then. Then we have Darius Shepard, who had the big week 2, but didn't do too much last week. Keontae Turpin was more of the guy last week, but $7,300, not a guy that I'm really trying to bet on this week. And then Alonzo Moore, $7,300. He's just been kind of around, but not doing too much overall. So they're mainly just GPP options at this point in time. Tight ends, not super interested there. I believe Brandon Bowman would be the guy if you have to pick one, but I'd rather not pick one at this point in time. Then on the Pittsburgh side, obviously we got Josh Love and Kyle Lauletta. Not really interested in either of these guys at quarterback. Probably Josh Love if I did have to play one in GPP. Garrett Groshek, probably more of a GPP option. Same thing with Madre London. Kind of just a split backfield there overall. Then we move down to the wide receivers, which is very interesting this week because they lost their top two options in Jeffrey Thomas and Bailey Gaither. So now you have Devon Hardaway, who just hasn't done that much, isn't really exciting at $3,600. Brandon Mack, the big outside wide receiver at $4,900. You'd probably bet on a touchdown if you're playing him this week. But I do have a lot of interest in Trey Walker at $3,100. Obviously, does have some chemistry with Josh Love from their days at San Jose State. And he's a guy that I did like quite a bit as a prospect, too. Obviously, didn't cut it in the NFL, but $3,100 could be a cash or a GPP option this week. Then last but not least, we have Matt Seibert at tight end out once again. And then Hunter Thedford is going to be the guy and just more of a dart throw option if you want to go there this week. Then we move over to Tampa Bay and Birmingham. So the biggest news for Tampa Bay is that Keith Mumphrey is actually active at wide receiver this week. Hassais Dubois, the wide receiver they just signed last week, he's still inactive as well. So we have Jordan Ta'amu, $10,900. You could play in cash or GPP if you want to. Then BJ Emmons looked like a pretty safe cash play in a couple of weeks, but this is very split backfield, a lot more split backfield than I like to think at the beginning of the year. BJ Emmons more of if they're in a positive game script, and Jawan Washington more if they're in a negative game script, which has been the case the last 2 weeks. In terms of the wide receivers, we saw Derek Dillon score a touchdown last week. He's probably the most interesting guy at $5,000 if you want to go there. John Franklin and GPPs at $3,200. He's getting some rushing attempts as well as some targets, so he could be interesting as well. Rashard Davis, maybe, but that price tag is just too high for me. Mumphrey, we haven't seen anything yet this season, so who knows how much he'll even be on the field. Cheyenne O'Grady, $5,900. He had the big week one with a bunch of targets, then I believe he's had 3 targets each of the past 2 games, so it's not quite as high of a ceiling as we would like there once again this week. Then we move over to the Birmingham side. So it's important to note that Alex Magoo is healthy enough to play this week. Jamar Smith is dealing with an illness as well as a lot of Birmingham guys. So Alex Magoo, I would not be surprised if he starts. If he starts, I do not have any problem playing him this week because I think if he starts, Jamar Smith's probably not coming in the game because Magoo's better and he's not sick this week. In terms of the running backs, CJ Marable would be the guy that I would be interested in, probably more in GPPs than cash, though. It's important to note that Jordan Chunt is active this week, so if you want to take that dart throw at $3,000, you could do that, although they'll have 3 running backs active for this game. Victor Bolden, we've seen him really get an uptick in targets the past 2 weeks, $9,800, maybe a cash or GPP play. I believe he does leave the league in receptions and targets, if I do remember correctly. Osiris Mitchell put up a big fat goose egg last week, $8,700. Good week 1, good week 2. Probably not going to put up a goose egg once again, but $8,700, a little bit too hefty of a price tag to kind of chance that. Marlon Williams scored a touchdown 2 straight weeks at $5,200. Definitely a solid GPP play there. Peyton Ramsey and then Darius, who's not listed here as well, I would not look at in any type of setting overall this week. Then it's important to note that Kerry Angeline's out this week with an illness. Sage Surratt is active for the first time all year. He's a guy that people thought of decently as an NFL prospect at one point in time, but kind of a jump ball contested catch guy. Your J.J. Arcega-Whiteside comp was there. Didn't get drafted, obviously. Didn't cut it with the Lions. Converted to tight end now. Don't know what we're going to get out of him, but $2,500 if you want to take that dart throw, you can definitely do that as well. And then at the very end here, we do have the Houston Gamblers, the New Orleans Breakers. Like I mentioned already, we don't have the injury reports or the actives and inactives for these 2 teams at this point in time. Once they do get released tomorrow morning, I can definitely put them down in the comments as well. So for Houston, you're looking at Clayton Thorson, $8,000, probably just a GPP option at this point in time. Maybe you could play him in cash just because $8,000 really isn't that much, but when Alex Magoo is $8,100, probably looks like a better option there. Mark Thompson, I do like in cash or GPP at $6,200 this week. Dalen Dawkins would just be a GPP only option at $4,800, just hoping for some pass catching upside. I believe Tyler Simmons was inactive last week, so I'm going to assume the same this week for him and JoJo Ward until we hear differently. Isaiah Zuber scored a touchdown 3 straight weeks. You could look at him in GPPs. Not really as much in cash just because he hasn't had that many targets and that many receptions, so if he doesn't get the touchdown, probably going to burn you. Anthony Retief Williams had the bigger week last week at $4,600. Definitely could look at him in GPPs. Tail Redding was active for the first time, but just had 1 catch. And Tyler Polka hasn't done too much this season, so probably just avoiding those 2 guys altogether. Brandon Barnes finally did something last week. $2,800 if you want to take that dart throw, you could do it. For New Orleans, Kyle Slaughter, the quarterback, $10,200. Probably more GPP option for me overall. Jordan Ellis, $6,400. Got most of the workload last week. I would consider him for cash or GPPs this week. TJ Logan was just released due to his injury. Bibbs is just a fullback / tight end. And then Larry Rose, $4,300. There's some pass catching upside there, but he wasn't too involved last week, so I'm not really going to him this week. Maybe in a GPP or two, but that'd be about it. Johnny Dixon's been very, very good the past 2 weeks, $7,300. Pretty good price tag for him. You could look at him in cash or GPP. Sean Poindexter finally did something last week, but $8,400. I'm not betting on that once again. Jonathan Adams had a nice week too, but last week really, really didn't do much. $4,300 was one of my favorite plays, though, due to his price tag and everything. I don't mind taking a chance at him in GPPs once again. Tawan Taylor, kind of the same way at $4,100. And then Sean Cannella, the tight end, has been rather consistent. So if you want to take a shot at him in GPPs, $5,300. Not a bad price there by any means. But that's a quick little rundown for the 8 different teams for this week, kind of guys that would play in cash and GPP settings. I know a couple of people asked last week maybe about my favorite stacks for the week and stuff like that too. So I think it's a very interesting week. And I don't think there's stacks that I'm targeting highly, but if you're going to go after like Houston with like Clayton Thorson, you probably want to stack him with Isaiah Zuber. If you're going with New Orleans, maybe you want to stack Kyle Slaughter and Johnny Dixon, because they really have had that chemistry the past 2 weeks. Birmingham, if I'm playing Alex Magoo, I have some interest in Alex Magoo and Victor Bolden. Alex Magoo did target Marlon Williams quite a bit week 1 as well. Obviously, he did hit Osiris Mitchell on the long touchdown as well. If I'm playing Josh Love for whatever reason in Pittsburgh, I'm probably going to stack him with Trey Walker just due to the college chemistry as well. And then Michigan, you're looking at Lance Lenore. You're looking at Joe Walker if you're stacking with Shea Patterson. And then for Philadelphia, I mean, I play Case Cookus, but I don't know exactly which wide receiver I would try to stack him with this week. I will say, too, the defenses I'd be looking at this week, maybe the Michigan defense going against Case Cookus, making his first start. The New Jersey defense going against Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's just not been very explosive overall. And then potentially Tampa Bay defense against Alex Magoo or an injured Jamar Smith this week. So those would be the main ones that I'd be focused on this week overall. Once again, if you guys have any questions related to USFL DFS for week number 4, be sure to leave it down in the comments. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, be sure to let me know your favorite play on this week's slate. Obviously, ton of different options out there. But with that being said, if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS as of right now, doing daily MLB DFS videos as well as the weekly USFL DFS videos. Once we get back to the regular season for the NFL and the NBA, we'll be covering that as well. If you're into football, you may be into my NFL draft grade series as well, which I'm doing on the daily, division by division, team by team, pick by pick, just kind of giving a grade for each pick, each team, how they did overall. So if that's something you're interested in as well, be sure to check that out. I do have the NFC West and the NFC North videos out already. The NFC South one will be coming out later today. And then with that being said, if you're a newer current subscriber who's yet to do so, also be sure to hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every single time I post up a new video. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. Hopefully you all enjoyed. And then last but not least, special shout out to each and every one of you watching today's video. I truly do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Definitely means a lot to me, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.